Hey guys, Sean.
Good afternoon.
For the love of... I miss COVID. There, I said it. We're not even 20 seconds into it. I miss it because if you can't tell, Eric, instead of being online with me on Zoom, is right next to me, so he's able to jump in with good afternoon.
There's not even the delay on the internet. It's straight in there.
It's not even afternoon. It's 10:30 on a Sunday, on a Saturday morning. Yeah. You sound like you want to take over this intro because
in your life.
I butchered the intro to the intro to this podcast. I'm enjoying a pretty good hangover right now.
I'm excited. This is the intro, but they don't know that we've just recorded it with Ciara, and it was brilliant. And
we told them twice, so they do know it.
Well, they know now, and it's not even the afternoon. But I'm sitting beside you for the first time recording a podcast in months, and it's brilliant. And yeah, you absolutely. I don't know. Did your nerves get you? The intro. And
no, we'd so much to cover with Ciara, and I didn't know what to highlight more. And I was like, where do I start with this thing? And I told you before, when it comes, I have to get the first line out of the way, and then it all rolls off the tongue. Hopefully from there. I don't always have the gift of the gab when it comes to these things. So I was like, where do I start with this? I was like, you know what? Let's just go straight into it and let her talk because people are sick of hearing me talk. And then you kept talking.
But this week, Sean, Ciara Beuster. This is the first time I haven't brought a friend on. This is another reason why we're excited.
Yes.
So it was brilliant, but I have been put in touch with friends who recommended her. She's a really, really motivating person. And what you're going to hear in this podcast is someone who doesn't take running seriously in the sense that she doesn't see what she does as hard.
Yeah.
And what we found amazing was everything is broken down really small, really simple.
She epitomizes what we bring to what any given run day is about, and sometimes we do get away with the numbers in terms of running and pace, stuff like that, but she strips it right back, and sometimes we just say go out there and just get a run in. And like you talked before, I think you even mentioned in the podcast, I'm not too sure, with Tom, you're like just left to watch at home and they're some of your best runs. And just get out and enjoy running, and the pace does not come with it, and just the mindset we try to tell people in terms of, like, when we first did our half marathon, we were like, that distance was insane. Torture. I remember getting to the 10-mile marker going, I will not be able for these last couple of miles. And I'm like, the last 3.1, I'm like, that's not going to happen. And then I really struggled for it. I'm like, there's no way I do a full one. Then we barely did a full one. And then like we had like a couple weeks when Oren Murphy's on it doing his 8th marathon. And it's a different mentality to him because he's just done so many marathons. And that's what running is. Like, it's just, you have to get over those barriers, and then you perceive the distance as something different.
And you just get used to it. But this episode is fabulous. It's just a good chat about running and hearing someone, again, the modesty and from what they've done, from marathons to Ironmans to this to that. But again, it all comes back to starting. Like Ozzy Doyle was happy to just run a lap of the rugby pitch.
Yeah.
Tom Dixon was happy to just run his 2.4k. Ruben was happy to just get out with work and do his 5k. Like, everyone has started so happy with that smallest distance. And this podcast again is a fantastic journey, and it's look, I think we're best off just letting people listen. I'm too excited to even talk. It's absolutely brilliant. Ciara is amazing and an absolute hero, and you'll hear what she's done for charity, and it's she is an inspiration even to 100%. Us, and we've interviewed, every week I get inspired. It's absolutely amazing. It's frustrating now being injured because I can't run, because I have this energy in me that I just want to go and run now, and it's a fantastic listen, and hopefully you won't be too put off by Sean's intro for this one.
Yeah, just skip 30 seconds of my I think not even 30 seconds, I think it was like 15 seconds of the intro, but I just wanted to get straight into the podcast. And awful intro, but with the exception of the awful intro, really, really enjoyable podcast. And I think there's not much more to add.
No, you're going to enjoy this one, so we're going to let Ciara Beuster do the rest of the talking on this one.
Yep.
So we really hope you enjoy this podcast.
Outro was terrible too. Sorry. Enjoy the podcast. As Eric will say, good afternoon as we're recording this part of the podcast at 9:30 on a Saturday morning, and I've only had one cup of coffee into me. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined with Eric, unfortunately not by Zoom. He is by my side, but that is not the important. Not the important point. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's
I just don't know about if I like it anymore.
I think the social distancing is like 6 meters to keep apart from each other. Is it?
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we're trying to. I'm kind of trying to stick my head into the screen here so we can see.
Stick your head into the screen is right, because we are on Zoom once again. Thank God for Zoom during these times. And today's guest is someone who has ran Team Ultra Marathons, has done a marathon faster than the pair of us, has also done a half Ironman.
No, full Ironman.
Full Ironman.
She signed up for the full Ironman and then did a half one just to warm up for it.
Yeah, which hadn't done any other triathlons before she even signed up for a half Ironman, which is pretty insane. It's kind of like us signing up for a marathon, not know what we're doing back then. Speaking of which, one of the worst intros I've done a pretty couple bad ones. Today's Ciara Beuster. Welcome to the podcast. How are we?
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
Ciara, I'm sorry Sean absolutely butchered your intro there.
You just put me in the spot with it. Like, I thought we were talking for that 20 minutes.
Do you want to try it again, or do you want to keep going?
We're into it now. That's it. It's done. One of these is going to be great. And
One
they're
of
going
them.
to be blushing. I'm going to get the guests blushing one minute. They're going to be like, Sean, that was the most incredible intro ever. And
you don't think so?
It's not going to happen this week, obviously.
Ciara,
how are we?
Ciara,
Good. How are you guys?
So a lot of people have told me you need to get Ciara Beuster onto the show, and I was like, I kind of heard of you through friends of ours and some of the people who've been on the show, and I was like, I didn't really know. And then I asked, like, so what has Ciara done? And then Sean was saying the list is quite long, and I was like, what the hell? And you've been following on with the podcast, you've been liking and sharing some of your things as well, but where did running all start for you? How did you get involved in this long journey that we're about to go through?
So I think initially, like, I did a tiny bit of running in school, like the cross country championships, like we were talking about before.
Yeah, we've all been there. Get out down we go, a bit of cross country.
Yeah. Couple of road trips here and there, but then never really did much after that. And then when I went to college, I did a bit of running just sort of to keep fit and to kind of for my mind more than anything. I never did any races or anything. And then I lived abroad, lived abroad for a while, and then moved back. And when I moved back, I signed up to the gym here. And I remember the gym were advertising a 5K. And I was like, oh, cool, yeah, 5K. I think I could try that. So I kind of did a bit of running to train for that, did the race. It was great crack. I just loved the atmosphere of it. And like, I did all right in the race as well. So I was like, oh, great, yeah, I might try a couple more of these. So I did a few more, maybe 5Ks, maybe 1 or 2 10Ks. And then I moved over to Germany, and I just remember Googling, you know, when you move somewhere new and you're trying to find things to do and people to meet.
Takeaways and bars, but you're looking up races in Germany. I've never had that feeling, but yeah, look, I can understand.
Just eat in Berlin.
Yeah. So I was just kind of Googling, and I remember seeing, like, firstly, there were loads of races. Like, every weekend there were loads of different ones to choose from. And I was like, Jesus, this is a whole other world out there. And I remember seeing loads of half marathons. And at the time, I didn't know that was a race distance. I had only ever heard of marathon. And to me, marathon was like, I don't know, on the level of Olympics or something. It was something really like such a foreign concept.
I felt that as well.
But then when I heard of a half marathon, I was like, okay, yeah, 21K, like that's 2 10Ks, that should be manageable. And I signed up for one of those. And I remember the first time I did it, like, I didn't have a watch or anything. I used to go onto Google Maps before I'd go out running, and I just like measure the distance and be like, okay, I need to run to that shop and back, and that's 10K or whatever. So I had no concept of time or pace or anything really. But I did my first half marathon, and at the end of that, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. That was awful. But then, you know, a couple of days later, I was like, oh, actually, kind of like this. And then I just kind of kept it up, and the next year signed up for my first marathon.
It is amazing though when you think about how much we've come along with Garmin's and phones and Map My Runs and stuff. Because back then, like, and we say back then, like before the war, but no, it's like the mapping a run and going, what's that distance? Like now, like I just hit my watch and I'm like, it just beeps, and I'm like, I have a fantastic gauge of distance now just from the watch and stuff. But when you go back when we started running 2010, 11, when you did a couple of jogs and stuff, you had no idea of time. Like we were only driving on a road yesterday and we were like, can you believe it's 5K from here to where I live? Because we can run that in 22 minutes. You know, like it's changed the game for us in that sense.
We had Ruben on the podcast there a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about back in like 2012, he did the Dublin Marathon, and he was like, I think I did enough training for it. Like you said, no watches or anything like that, or no Map My Run, or no even like he didn't even know exactly what a training plan should be leading up to it. He's like, I think I've done 20, 30K in my long runs leading up to it. And then when he actually had got the marathon done, he was like, oh, my running was probably like 15, 20K. It wasn't close to the amount of long runs he thought he had, kind of similar to yourself. And your first Dublin marathon was around the same time as his, actually. Was with Dublin, when you did the marathon in 2014, was Dublin your first marathon then as well?
Yeah.
And what was the experience like?
Pretty painful, but also pretty amazing. So I didn't really know what I was doing. So when I was training for it, I was living in Berlin, and my housemate was also from Galway, and the two of us signed up together. So we were kind of, again, neither of us really knew what we were doing, but we started training together. And then at the time, I didn't read any of the blogs or anything either. So I made the mistake of buying new socks the day before and putting them on. I was like, this is great now, a fresh pair of socks, be mighty. And just like 10 kilometers in, I started getting blisters, and they just got worse and worse. And it was tough. That those last 30 kilometers were tough. But at the same time, like, there was something about it, the atmosphere and just the feeling of finishing was amazing. And straight away I was like, I need to do that again. Like, I have to do something like that again.
Like, we said it as well, that first marathon we did, we completely underestimated. We didn't know what running was. We didn't read a blog. I genuinely, I think we ate a big lasagna, and
it wasn't even like a good lasagna, homemade lasagna.
And I wanted the Chinese, and we settled on lasagna. Like, we hadn't a clue and suffered for 4 hours, and we looked at it, we nearly fell out. Like, after 10, 12 years of hanging around with each other, it was the first time we nearly fell out with each other. But it's amazing what drew us back, and it's like what you said, it's that feeling of that accomplishment of finishing and the atmosphere, and like, we suffered. I think you get rose tinted glasses shortly afterwards, maybe a couple of weeks
100%.
afterwards. But that wasn't the end of your marathon journey anyway. You definitely caught the bug, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So that was 2014 in October, and actually after that marathon, I suppose because I had started running way more, then I did the race, and then afterwards I just kind of stopped running, and it was like winter, the weather was pretty miserable. And that Christmas I ended up doing my back in. I couldn't move. Like, for a couple of days I was just lying flat in bed. I couldn't like put on my socks or anything. I couldn't do anything. It was awful. Like, it was the most like debilitating injury I've ever had. But
worst, isn't it? It just takes away out. Like, I have a sore knee now, but I can still function somewhat. But when your back is gone, you're like, oh no. What? Like, you feel everything. Like, it's especially at Christmas with all the food and everything that comes with it as well.
Yeah, and so I just remember lying there and being like, what is this? And my friend then, she was living in London. She came over. She was home for Christmas. She came over and we were chatting, and she had kind of gotten into running as well, and I think she had done a marathon or two. And so then we were like, oh, what will we do next year? And we kind of thought of Berlin, and we were like, will we do Berlin? And at that time, even though I was lying in bed, I couldn't move, the two of us were like, yeah, let's sign up for Berlin. And then I got over the back injury, and then the next year started training for Berlin, and the two of us did Berlin in 2015, and that was an unbelievable experience. Like, amazing.
Which was better, Berlin or Dublin?
Yeah.
Oh, be careful now. Be careful.
It's so hard to say. So what I would say is the Irish people are by far the best at cheering. I think they're just like unbelievable at getting into it, and it's just insane. But I suppose the thing about Berlin is it's one of the World Marathon Major Series, and you have people from literally all over the world, and there's that kind of, and you have all the elite athletes. So at the beginning, like when you're starting, you're lining up, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands. I think it's something like 40,000 people maybe.
Wow.
It's
so twice the size of Dublin.
Yeah, it's insane, and you can see everyone sort of lining up, and there's big screens everywhere. And then the elite athletes start first, so they're kind of introducing, so they're like, and then we have Kipchoge, blah blah blah, and all these unreal athletes, and then you hear the gun going off and you see them on the screen, they're all taken off. So it's just like that atmosphere is unbelievable.
Ciara, when you did Berlin compared to Dublin, because a lot of people would travel around the world to go to Berlin because they say it's the flattest marathon in the world. When you were going through it, were you like, thank God I'm not going through the hills up like that 35-kilometer mark with hitting the wall in their UCD in comparison? Did you feel that much difference in the legs, or the marathon just a marathon where you're gonna just really feel it?
Yeah, I think a marathon is a marathon, but having said that,
damn it, Ciara, I'd hope. I just signed up for Berlin next year.
no, yeah, well, I have to say it is very flat, and the course is also amazing because, like, if you've been to Berlin, there's so many sights to see. It's like a sightseeing tour of the city, and you have all of the roads to yourself. Like, it's all just runners.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it is very flat, so it's good for getting PBs and that.
Speaking of PBs and Berlin, when we first did this podcast, we were supposed to go to Madrid. And after that, the second one, we were thinking, after 3-4 months, it'd be great to go to Berlin because it would be a flat one and be great. But for the Madrid marathon, Eric's goal was to do a marathon in 3 hours and 30 minutes. Your best marathon was done recently, and that was a similar goal for yourself. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, because I had, so I did Berlin in 2015. I can't remember what my time was there. Then I did it again in 2017.
Yeah.
And I did it in 3:31. So then I was like, here, I have to go back and break that 3:30.
Oh, you just made me uncomfortable.
I know. And at the time, I suppose, like, I had kind of taken a good bit of time off my PB, so I was delighted. But at the same time, I was like, 1 minute off 3:30, I have to go back again. So then I went back again last year and broke the 3:30.
Unbelievable.
So your record stands at the time to beat, Sean, is what, 3:28?
3:28, yeah. And well, for that marathon, actually, one of the things I love about running, and I've heard you talking about it as well, is the kind of community and the people you meet along the way. And so in Berlin last year, like, I went over, I was running it myself. I didn't know anyone else running it, and my parents came over to support, my boyfriend. But while I was running, so it started raining halfway through, and I was like, kind of shit, but at least we're from Ireland, we're used to it. And then probably around 28 kilometers or something, I saw this girl up ahead of me, and she had the Irish flag at the back of her jersey. And I was like, okay, she looks like she's going strong. I'm going to try and stick with her. And when you're in a race and you just pick someone, you try and stick with them. So I did, and then eventually we were kind of running side by side for a good while, and then at some point we kind of started talking. Now, not much chat, but like every once in a while, kind of help, back in rain.
Just communicating with blinks and eyebrows at some point.
But we ended up running the whole rest of the race from 28k to the end together. And it was just amazing. I was like, this is great. Like, I'm going to stick with this girl. And then when we got to the finish line, there's so many people. Like, it's just such a big race that I lost her. She went down a different way, and I lost her. And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I know her first name. That's all I know. And I know she's from Cork. And then I was kind of wandering around, and eventually I spotted her again. I was like, oh, hey, it's you. So we had a great catch up, and we kind of connected them on Instagram. I thought we were going to have
missing person files on this. You're from Cork and ran in Berlin last year. Get in touch with Ciara.
But yeah, so then, and we've kind of kept in touch a bit since on Instagram, and just, it's nice to meet those people and kind of
just suffer with it.
Yeah.
When you go through something together like that, like a marathon, you do form that kind of bond as well, like with people that have done the race as well. It's absolutely brilliant.
And I do think, because I met her and because I was like, the two of us kind of pushed each other on, do you know what I mean? So for both of us, it was a PB, and both of us were like, oh my God, thank you so much. Couldn't have done it without you. It just kind of,
Were you nervous having done a 3:31? So when we were going up to Madrid, Sean kept saying like, 3:30 is nothing to you. And I was like, oh, like, because getting so close to it the last time, and I think I was on for a 3:25 or something, but the hamstrings gave up around 33k or so, thereabouts. I was nervous to go, what if that happens again, or what if this happens again? Were you nervous at all about having come so close? Can you put in the same performance, or did you just go, I've been here before and I can do this? And
to be honest, I wasn't that nervous. You never really know until you're there what's going to happen. Like, anything can happen on race day, and I had a glute injury the previous year, so I was actually just buzzing to be running again, and to be running well, and to be able to run a marathon. So I was like, everything else is a bonus. Like, if I get close to 3:30, I'm delighted, and if I break it, happy days. And then I suppose I kind of knew as I was going along that it was going well.
Yeah.
And then you just have to hope for the best. And
the hope that you hold on for dear life, nothing goes wrong. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing.
And marathons are not the only thing you've done that you say you just sign up to do out of the blue. You've also done Ironmans.
Yeah, you're very average, Ciara, as well.
Was a marathon not enough, or what happened there? Not only done Ironmans, you've
just showing off now.
Yeah, you've qualified for World Championships and all the rest. Like, I'm very modest. Like, I'm starting to think at the start of this podcast when you did a 5K, like, I did all right. Now you did a little bit more than all right in the first couple of 5Ks you did. How did you get into Ironmans from there?
So I moved. So I lived in Berlin for a year from 2013 to 2014, and I moved home then, and it was my first time living in Galway again since I left school, basically. So most of my friends had left, and I was like, okay, I need to sign up to something where I can meet people, and so at that point, like, I was running a good bit, so I was like, maybe like a running club. I was also looking at choirs, because I was thinking, I might get into singing.
There's a big difference between a choir and an Ironman club.
But yeah, then I was just kind of Googling around, and then I went, actually that time when I had the back injury, I went to an osteopath that I had gone to a couple of times over the years. And I knew that he ran as well, and he was telling me about triathlon club, and I was like, oh, a triathlon club, cool. So he was like, yeah, it's great fun, and you could do, if you prefer running, you can kind of focus on running, but then there's also the swimming and the cycling, and it's a great way of meeting people, and you should come down and check it out. So I was like, yeah, why not, with nothing to lose. So I went to a couple of training sessions, and I think I just started with the running, and I kind of had it in my head, like, realistically, I'm not really going to do a triathlon, but I can just focus on the running and meet nice people or whatever. And then I met, like, pretty early on, I met two girls, Louise and Caroline. I became good friends with them. And I think they had both done one or two triathlons, and they were like, here, just try it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'll start cycling and swimming and see how it goes. Not the best swimmer.
No, neither am I.
Not really. And I don't know if you've heard this as well, Eric, but people used to always say, oh yeah, you're tall, you'd be a good swimmer. Like,
yeah, and then they expect Michael Phelps, and it looks like a drowning victim in the water.
That's why I'm not a good swimmer. I'm not tall. What she's talking about?
Terrible. It's not true. It's just more of to drown. That's all it is.
They're killing me. Not swimming.
Yeah, so then I was, kind of training, doing cycling, swimming, running. It's good fun. Met loads of fun people. And then at some point that summer, we heard that the first full distance triathlon was coming to Ireland. And I remember myself and Louise were like, geez, that's mad, isn't it? That'd be class to do. And the more we talked about it, the more we were like, yeah, I wonder, is that possible? I hadn't done any triathlons at the time, so I was like, this could be a bit of a stupid idea, but we have time. Like, we have time to train, so surely we can, same as a marathon, you set out your training plan and you do it. So yeah, we were like, look, let's just sign up and see how it goes. And it is a pretty big commitment because it's quite expensive as well. So once we signed up, we're like, that's it, we're doing it. So we bought this book, what was it called again? Be Iron Fit, I think, Don Fink. It was like the book that everybody was talking about. We were like, right, we just read this book, do the training plan. How hard can it be? And I remember talking to that same osteopath, because he had done a good few different triathlons, and I think Ironman and Half Ironman. And when you ask someone for advice,
episode, God love him.
Yeah. But when you ask someone for advice, but you ask the person that is going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yes.
So, I wasn't going to go asking my parents, who were going to be like, that's daft. So I asked him what he thought, and he was like, you've done a marathon, you can work on your swim, you've time to work on that, and you can cycle. So yeah, go for it. And then once we'd signed up to that, I was like, right, I better do a few triathlons to train for the Ironman.
So you gave yourself 11 months, and you'd never done a triathlon before doing this, and I have to just commend you on your attitude, because when we say to people, you should give triathlons a go, like there's a try distance of like a 250 meters, and they're still like, oh no, geez, no, I'm not getting into that. Whereas you like exhibit Sean,
I'm staying out of this part of the conversation.
but you were like, no, we are saying Ironman because that's the more recognized brands. There's two kind of brands, there's Challenge and there's Ironman, but that length of distance, you were just like, yeah, I could do it. Like that just describes to everyone listening like how modest you are to the challenge of just going, yeah, well, I've done it like a half marathon. It's just 2 10Ks. Yeah, but they're at the same time. But it's a fantastic attitude that you have. But what did you ever doubt during your training that you're like, I don't think I'm able to do this? Or did you always maintain that positive attitude? Because I know a lot of people, even me, I have the doubts. A couple of weeks ago, before I picked up the injury, I kind of had a bad run in the heat, and I probably didn't credit the heat too much. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. I was like, I might have to reassess my goals. And did you ever have that kind of feeling, especially training for 11 months for something you'd never even tried before?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I suppose we signed up for 11 months in advance, and then the training plan that we got was a 30-week training plan. So that's like, 7.5 months. So we started training in November. And then I suppose what we did was like, so I signed up with my friend Louise, and honestly, like having her to train with made a massive difference, because we just kind of spurred each other on. And whenever I was having those doubts, you know, I'd talk to her and she'd be like, Ciara, we can do this, and vice versa. So that definitely helped massively. And then we just kind of broke it up into smaller goals. So like, we're like, right, first I'm going to do my first triathlon, see how that goes. Then that was an Olympic distance. Then we'll go up to half, and then we'll go up to full, and we'll see how it goes. But I definitely did have doubts, but I think having a positive attitude helps a lot. Like, and I would maintain that in life in general, but definitely with anything fitness related.
And it's funny you say that, because everyone we've had on, and it's a bit of a theme that's in every conversation we've had, and we spoke about it just before we started recording, was those like-minded people with the positive attitude, and you tend to be surrounded by them, and it does affect more than just your runs. It affects your everyday, like when stuff's not going right in work, it's you take a bit more positive attitude and be like, look, we'll figure it out, like there has to be a way, things happen, you know, like it definitely does stand out, and you're not the first and definitely not the last. And it's something we kind of talked about as well, that we won't force people to run, we kind of tell people the story. And what we like is this kind of positive reinforcement in your life is what it gives you, and it's absolutely amazing. But yeah, so how was the race?
The race was, I actually was reading back over, I wrote a blog that kind of the 12 weeks leading up to it. So I read back over it last night.
we might even put that one in the show notes there now, so people can get more details on that.
Yeah, I can send you on the link. But yeah, I suppose leading up to it, like going back to the topic of the doubts, I had a massive doubt about 6 weeks before the race, I think it was. There was a recce of the swim course, and the swim course is like 10 minutes from my home house. So, you know, I swam there a good bit. But like I said, I am not a strong swimmer, and I never really became a strong swimmer, even through all the training. Like I could get by. But during that recce, I had a panic attack in the water, and I had to be taken out by the kayak. And I got out of the water and I was devastated, and I was like, there's no way I can swim that distance in 6 weeks time. And I was thinking, like, I wonder, could I drop down to the half Ironman, or what am I going to do? I was so gutted. And then, you know, again, Louise and other people were like, you know, you've got this, we have time, let's do it. And I went into the water between then and the race, like, I don't know, every day, and just kind of built back up my confidence. And on the day then it was fine. But I suppose on the day of the race, like, you know, when you get to a big event and you've been training for so long, you're just so excited that the day is there. And in a way, you kind of, the hard training is done, and it's such a good buzz, because you don't have to worry about, like, I don't know, bringing water and food with you, or like, it's all kind of laid out for you. You have support. You just have to sort of follow it and go with it and enjoy it. So, and that was one of my big things. I was like, I want to enjoy this day, because I don't know if I'll ever do this again. So I'm going to make the most of it. So I suppose, like, I don't know what time of the morning we started. It was very early because I remember getting up at like 3:45 or something. And went down. We'd left our bikes the night before, checked the bikes, put all my food on the bike and all of that, and went into the water. And I remember, so coming out of the swim, it was a choppy enough swim, but it was fine. But coming out of the water, I was like buzzing. Like I was so delighted because I had
Race is over.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I've survived the swim. Now all I need to do is cycle 180 kilometers and run a marathon. Like we can do that, but the swim is done. And there's actually a photo of me coming out of the water, and you can just see the relief on me. And then passing my family and my friends, they're all the same. They're delighted. My mother is like, okay, I don't need to worry about her drowning anymore. And then the cycle was, so it was kind of through the Burren in County Clare, very hilly, very, very hilly, fairly exposed. And the first maybe 50k or 70k or something were great because there was a half Ironman on at the same time, and we were on the same bike course, so there were kind of loads of people around. And then as we went on, it got very lonely, and you're like out in the middle of nowhere. It was very exposed, and it wasn't the nicest day.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of talking to myself that day. And because on like for triathlon, you can't have music with you either or anything. So that was tough. The bike was just lonely, I suppose. But I had my friends and family they're unbelievable. So they drove around the bike course, and they stopped a couple of times and cheered me on, and that just absolutely made my day. And then I suppose I was just so delighted to be doing it. And then once the bike was done, so we cycled back into Galway, and then the run was in Galway, like along the prom in Salthill, where I run a lot anyways. So it was just so nice, and it was kind of an out and back course, so you did 4 out and back.
I'd say it felt nice because you mentioned the prom there of some of your easier runs. I'd say it just felt nice to be like, Jesus, 5k is where I started doing here, or little runs, and I'd say it just felt nice to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the support there, because I suppose the bike course had been pretty empty. There weren't many people out in the burn in the rain, but then the run course there were loads more people around, and then I met like Louise and my other friend Sinead who were doing it. I met them along the run course because you're going out and back, you kind of see people and you meet people, and so then I was just delighted. I was delighted to be there, and it was such like absolutely unbelievable feeling, and finishing it, I just was over the moon.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
It's mad. We started this conversation, you were talking about getting your doing the half marathon and not too sure what it was, and crossing the line thinking that's it, I don't want to do any further than that. And I remember we did our half marathon, it was like, oh my God, that felt forever. And that distance now feels a lot shorter. I suppose when people doing the first 5k feels a long time, and 10k you keep going to marathon. And I was just sitting back there the last 2-3 minutes because you guys were talking about how great it was to be running a familiar surface for that marathon, looking back 4 times. In my mind, I'm thinking, hang on a second, you're after going through a panic attack of the water, and you're just someone got through that, all these hills, the burn. Like, I mean, my car struggled driving those hills, the burn. There you are cycling for 180k. And then you get to the start of that marathon and you feel great, yet you've done all this beforehand. That doesn't add up to me quite yet. And that's why I suppose I probably need to do a triathlon or something to build myself up in that. Ciara, that is unbelievable. What's the next goal?
That's a good question. So, because that was in 2016 that I did that, and after that I was like, okay, I'm happy with that. Like I might do a few other triathlons, but don't know if I'll do another Ironman. I might.
Did you qualify for Worlds or something from that?
Yeah, myself and...
He was going to brush over it.
I
knew it. I was like, I'm going to let her brush over it and bring it back. Yeah, go on anyways.
Yeah, myself and my friend Sinead qualified in our age group for the World Championships in Slovakia. And I think, so the World Championships then is a half Ironman. So I was like, oh, sure, granted, we might as well do that. And that was the following June, I think. And kind of mid-April, I got my appendix out. And at the time, so I'd been training away, and I was like, oh, this will be nice, and the two of us will go over together and it'll be a bit of fun. And then when I went into hospital and got my appendix out, I remember the doctor came and was kind of explaining to me what they were going to do and all of that. And he said, do you have any questions? And I was like, no. And then my boyfriend was there with me, and he was like, do you want to ask about training? And I was like, oh yeah. When can I go back training? So he was like, because in my mind, I was like, sure, appendix, like they do this all the time. It's not that big a deal. And he said, you can go back to work in 2 weeks and you can go back training in 6 weeks. And I nearly fell out of bed. I was like, 6 weeks? But I don't have 6 weeks. And then he kind of looked at me and he said, is that a problem? So I told him that I was training for this event. And he was like, okay, well, I mean, you're young and you're obviously fit enough. So maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And even then I was like, oh God, that's not ideal. But yeah, so at that point I was like, look, I'm just going to go over and enjoy it. I'll train as best I can. So again, I was just delighted to be there and to be able to do it. And it was like a whole other level, because again, you've all these amazing athletes doing the race, and the setup is just unbelievable. Like, you know, you were talking to Rachel Farrell in the podcast before about her, and I was just thinking that just that energy and the people around was just amazing. So we did that, and that went pretty well, and I was delighted with that. So, and then that was 2017. I did a few other small triathlons, and then 2018 I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I actually decided to go back to college part-time. So I kind of left the triathlon and focused on running, because I'm studying as well. So in terms of my next goal, I think probably I was listening to Austin's podcast about the ultra, and I actually messaged him saying,
I'm going to get involved in another challenge here. I can sense it.
Yeah. So I actually messaged him being like, what's the name of that race, and can you still enter? But he was telling me you have to have done an ultra to get into that one. So I was like, right, okay, I'll have to find an ultra first to do. But the idea of an ultra marathon definitely appeals to me. Like myself and my friends did an ultra marathon as a relay last year, and I was like, I want to do that. Like I like long distance, and so much of it is mental, and I think I've built up a lot of mental strength. So I'd love to try it.
Yeah, right. So I'm doing an ultra with Ozzy. I'm doing an ultra with Ciara. And where else am I going?
You're at Ruben doing a half Ironman.
Ruben doing a half Ironman, and then sure.
Might as well do the full, Eric.
Yeah,
might as well.
That's it.
Possibly go wrong.
Sure, 7.5 months. Sure, that's all it takes.
As long as you get your appendix taken out 6 weeks to
go.
Look.
Proper challenge for you. Proper challenge, yeah. That is absolutely amazing. However, where we picked up your story was you using the benefit of running. We've seen a lot during COVID of people getting out and doing their runs and trying to get involved for charity. Your latest one was for Pieta House, am I right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so where did that start? I suppose it kind of started at the start of May. I was thinking of, you know, the Darkness into Light for Pieta House that's always on. I knew that was going to be cancelled, and I was thinking, I wonder, is there a way I could do fundraise for them apart from that? And I was sort of hemming and hawing and thinking, there's probably loads of people doing fundraisers, and I'm not really sure what I could do. And then that girl I mentioned earlier that I'd met in Berlin during the marathon, Sinead, I saw on her Instagram, she did a 32-kilometer run for her 32nd birthday for Pieta House. And I was like, yes, it's my 32nd birthday this month. I'm going to do that. That's a brilliant idea. So then I thought, yeah, I'll do that. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was thinking, okay, like that is a challenge, but it's not the biggest challenge for me. So I might add something else onto it. And then I was kind of sticking with the theme of 32K for my 32nd birthday, which I also decided to do in a 3.2K radius. And then, so I said I'd do 320 kilometers for the month. So yeah, I did that, and I only decided that probably about a week into May. So I had been running anyways, but I didn't have that goal in mind. So then I wrote out a plan and stuck to it.
320 kilometers in a month is
32 a day nearly. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so close as well. How did you break that down? Were you just doing 32 Ks every day? How did the
No,
body
no, no,
feel?
no.
Or it was just like a lot one day and then 5K the next, or?
How did I break it down? Yeah, I did kind of like a long run at the weekends and then about 10K a day the rest of the week.
Yes,
and I
easy. Yeah, thanks.
but it's funny because at the time when I committed to it, I was like, yeah, 320 kilometers, that's 80 kilometers a week. That should be doable. But looking back on it and getting through it then, like by the end, I was really tired. And I looked back over kind of my training over the past couple of months and years, and I was like, geez, I've never run that mileage in a month before. Like it actually is quite a bit. But yeah, I did break it down, which made it a lot easier. And I think knowing that you're doing it for a cause makes a big difference to me anyways, because I was like, right, you know, so many people suffer, and you know, the least I could do is just.
You did raise a fair amount as well, didn't you, in the end?
Yeah, I raised 4,700, which was like completely surpassed my expectations, because I had kind of thought in the beginning I might try and aim for 1,000, and even then I was like, oh, is that a bit much? And then just I think so many people support Pieta House, and I think people like supporting someone they know as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I was just blown away by it.
Do you know?
4,000.
No, it's brilliant, and it's a great cause, and it was a fantastic thing to do. And that's where we seen your Instagram story, and we picked it up, and I was like, why didn't we think of doing something like, you know, like it was absolutely amazing to do and a really good cause. And we had Oren Murphy, who was on for the Childline, and he did a marathon in his estate and stuff. So we were seeing a lot of people doing a lot of great things, and it was absolutely brilliant to watch. We didn't know that you were a supreme athlete, so now it feels like nothing. But, you know, look, well done on going out 320 kilometers in a month, but it is absolutely fabulous. And I suppose probably a nice way to lead into it. You've got to the end now. You're like 320 kilometers. You broke it down. It's only 80K a week, but we have to bring it back to like you just started to aim for a 5K. So, and from talking to people about you in our little fact finding mission about Ciara, you've motivated a lot of people to run, and you don't even know it. Similar to the fact that you're about to pass over, I did the World Championship. You know, like you don't notice that you're influencing people and bringing people along. Like, do many people tell you that you've motivated them?
Well, Louisa, when I was telling her I was coming on to chat to you, she was like, Ciara, do you realize like how many people you've gotten to run just by? Yeah, I suppose just because I love what I do and I share it with friends and family, and I would never force someone or push someone to run, because I think there's no point. Like everyone has to find what they enjoy and discover it for themselves. But I suppose if you're around somebody who's always buzzing after running, you're like, oh, I might try that. So yeah, it kind of, when I look at it now over the years, more and more people in my circle have started running. And actually last Christmas, I was with my boyfriend and his family, and his sister was like, oh, I think I'm going to try and sign up for like a half marathon. And she hadn't been running much, so I was like, Ashling, why don't you start with like a 10K? She's like, yeah, okay, great idea, let's start with a 10K. And then her boyfriend was like, oh, you're doing a 10K, like I'll do it.
That advice, yeah.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I was like, don't follow my advice, or don't follow me, what I've done. And then, you know, her boyfriend and then my boyfriend and a few other people kind of said, yeah, like a 10K, I think we could do that. So then, and once somebody tells me that they want to do something, I am 100% supportive and on board, and I will like encourage you and support you, motivate you, do whatever. But I'd never kind of force someone to do it. So I suppose in that sense, whenever somebody tells me that they want to try running, I'll be there to support. So then they did their first 10K in March. It was actually probably about a week before lockdown. Oh, yeah. And they loved it, and they've all kept up running now through the.
You set them up on a good path during lockdown anyway to keep people running anyway, yeah. It is, and it's the reason we started the podcast is because for the likes of me, I did not want to run at all. I thought it was disgusting, and people who did long distances were were mental. And it's only when I kind of got into it, and I had people bring me along through Austin and Tom, and it's what it did for me. You cross that line, and we talked about it with Rachel in an episode where you recross that line where you no longer need people who have brought you along, where you feel that buzz and excitement yourself, and you get a lot from it. It's what we kind of try to achieve with the podcast, is not to force people to run, but just try and highlight by bringing the likes of yourself on and hearing how great of a story you have and where you've come from, is to highlight like there's a lot to be gained from if you just give it a go, and there's plenty of people that will support you and help, and a lot of people are afraid to ask for that help, or afraid to put on the runners to go for that 5k, or don't want to run with Eric because he can run at this pace, and don't want to run with Ciara. I'm not going running with you, Jesus, you're too good. But they forget that we're actually there to kind of, we like to go slow occasionally and talk to people and encourage them, and it takes our mind off it, even though it's mileage to the legs. But it's kind of what we started out, really, wasn't it, with the podcast and the group, just to encourage people.
Yeah, I mean, my very first marathon was just to say I did it and tick it off the bucket list, and like that's it. And like Eric said at the start, we just totally, we just didn't appreciate the distance that was a marathon. I was like, no, I got to keep doing that. And then my goal was break under 4, and I was going to say similar to yourself, not quite similar to yourself. It was like, I got close. I was like, no, I got to do it one more time and try to beat it. And next thing you know, you're like running 3-4 days a week. It's just like, this is like, I'm almost calling myself a runner at this stage, where I'm like, I just enjoy going out and just doing a little bit each and every day. And that's what it's about. It's just like you said there earlier, Ciara, it's mental. A lot of this is just to get out there and just build a little bit more each time, and the numbers and all the rest come with it eventually, but just to keep pushing yourself to do a little bit more is a goal really for a lot of us. That was unbelievable podcast, Ciara. I'm going to go for a run tomorrow now and build myself up after that.
I'm so jealous. I'm getting fat again. I haven't ran in a week and a half. We'll recover. Ciara, it has been absolutely brilliant. I suppose as a final kind of wrap up, have you any advice that, just to top it off, for anyone who does want to get started? Because people will listen to you. They don't listen to us at all, but they'll listen to you. Have you any advice for someone who wants to get into running, or is half trying to get into running, but is a bit nervous about the whole ordeal?
Yeah, I think what I would say is start off slow and don't worry about like time or distance or pace or anything at all. Like, we're human beings. If you have 2 legs and you can walk and you can run, like, just put on a pair of runners and go out and run slowly, like up and down your road, and see how you feel, and then do like a little bit more the next day, a little bit more. But I think, like, for me, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing in terms of pace and time and distance. And I think at the moment there's a lot of focus on that because we have all the technology. But if you're just starting, like, if you just set yourself a goal of like, whatever it is, running for 5 minutes and then walking for a minute and then running for another 5 minutes, and just gradually build it up and enjoy it. I think for me, like, enjoyment is massive. If you're not enjoying it, then try and slow down or try and run a little less until you enjoy it. Yeah,
it's the best bit of advice. And people are, as you've said, even in our group, we've given them times and pacings and guidelines to run, but we're so bombarded with times, and even Tom was on a few weeks ago, and we actually both said some of the best runs we've ever done is when we left the watch at home, and we just went what felt good, what pace didn't matter, just go and run. And it's what we're trying to do. And I think it's a great way to finish the podcast. It's a fantastic piece of advice for people to get out and enjoy their run.
Yeah, and pretty much on that note, Ciara, thanks very much for having us on the podcast this week, and to everyone listening, I suppose, take care.
We didn't want to do an outro, but Sean made such a hash of the last one, we felt we couldn't just leave it on that. But that was the episode.
How did I top the end still? What could I say to wrap up that podcast there in like 30 seconds to go bang? That was like to build it back up again. I had to do what I always do, bring it back down.
Then, maybe you're right.
Yeah, so I brought it back down there. But that was an incredible podcast with Ciara. Very inspirational as we head into our final week of our 5k PB challenge.
Yeah, this is the week.
Yep, and we're going to talk more about that in our Any Given Run Day Run Club, and as well as talking about how we're going to do our 5k PB next weekend. We also have Danny on for one last week of the yoga.
And it's brilliant, and it's been 3 fantastic classes, but this is the last week. For anyone who's nervous about giving it a try as well, it's important just to log on and see. Even if you don't want to take part or you're not comfortable with it, just log on and see. It's absolutely brilliant. It's made wonders. I'm suffering with an injury now as well, and even the difference, we've done it on Thursday, the difference in my flexibility, my lower back after, was absolutely brilliant.
We had some people this week start off their first week doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Not the podcast, the yoga with Danny, and it's one of those things where each and every session I am humbled on my flexibility, and I've talked about this well before Danny in the podcast, is that my flexibility is useless, for lack of a better term, at this time in the morning. And it's actually gotten better over the 3 weeks. Now, with that, I have done other yoga sessions with Danny on the video, gone through them again, because she puts up the recording in the group. So I have redone those episodes, and she makes the exercise practical. Like, if you're familiar with yoga, you know, like Yoga Block or even the books, and she's like, use this as a curb. So if you get the stretches in, if you're cramping up or anything during a run, these are some great stretches to throw in from that. And she makes the last 5-10 minutes of the session practical, and then the first 20 is just, it's specific to what we do for runners. So this past week, it was about the glutes, the lower back, the hamstrings, the hip flexors. It was just solely focused on them, as well as a little bit of breathing work to work on our overall endurance.
Overall, though, we really hope you enjoyed this week. Ciara was absolutely fantastic to have on. She is an absolute inspiration, and you will be seeing more of Ciara, and hopefully we'll get her back on, because she is an amazing person, an amazing athlete, and we really hope you got a lot from this podcast, especially leading into the final week. And that's okay if you haven't taken part in anything from now, as you've heard in this podcast. It's never too late to start. It's always okay to just get out, take a watch off, and just go for a run, and as Ciara said, do what feels good. So that was a better outro, Sean. So I think we'll leave it. I'll finish it.
I suppose you can finish it.
So we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for joining and tuning in. We'll be back next week with a guest we haven't even decided on yet, but stay tuned, keep running, and keep enjoying it. Take care.
Bye.